Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Certara webinar on how to streamline your PKPD workflows with Integral. My name is Marie Bernard, and I am the EMEA Zone Leader at Certara Software, and it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Simon Davis. Simon joined Certara in 2005 and has been supporting and training scientists on Phoenix and Integral. He is also a regular speaker at Certara webinars, as well as at scientific meetings such as PK UK and AGA. So some of you might have heard him speak before. Now we want to make this session as interactive and helpful as possible. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them via the chat throughout the meeting, and Simon will address them at the end of the presentation. All the attendees are muted, so again, submit the questions through the question panel. And this presentation will be recorded, so we will send you after the presentation the recording. Now, without further ado, I hand it over to you, Simon.
So thank you very much for that introduction, Marie. I'm going to actually take my webcam off because I find that distracting seeing myself while I'm talking. So go off there and you can concentrate on the presentation. So before we start, what is Integral? If you haven't come across it, it's a software as a service hosted system. So it's cloud-based Oracle repository on Amazon Web Services. And it's built to support Part 11 compliance of not just your data, but also the supporting models, any other analyses, and the results that you generate from those analyses. As I hope to show you in the demonstration, it's a fairly intuitive user design, so you can collect, upload, analyze, and report on that data, as well as run audits to show the compliance, who's accessed the data, what edits they've made. So we feel this should help many groups, pharmacometricians who might be using a variety of tools like NumMem, Monolix, RSNLME, Piranha, biostatisticians who might be using SAS or R, pharmacokineticists who may be using any of the tools above, and additionally perhaps our own Phoenix software. Clinical pharmacologists the same. Okay. So what is this aiming to do? We're looking at saying if you put all your data in this repository, you can have the data in one place, be confident it's all up to date because the analyses are linked back to the source data. Everyone's using the same single point of data, and that means that data allows you to be make better and quicker, more informed decisions. All the data is linked. Everyone knows they've got the most up-to-date version. If your source data changes, your analyses are flagged as being out of date. So this makes the interaction between different groups much more efficient. And I'll show you some ways that within those groups, we can use Phoenix and other script tools to make faster and more efficient workflows as well. So both internally, we're going to promote greater collaboration, more efficient collaboration, but the system, because it's hosted, you can securely grant access to other third-party collaborators should you wish. So another CRO or an external consultant, maybe you're out-licensing one of your compounds. The key part of Integral is that all the data is reproducible, traceable, and secure. So because it's held in a database, you can only access through your username and password, which is of course unique to yourself. Any changes you make, you must have permissions to do so, and those changes you made are all tracked, audited, and if necessary can be reverted and rolled back to prior versions as well. Having all this hosted by Certara means that the IT burden for implementing and using such a system is greatly reduced, and that's very attractive to a lot of groups. And all of the above is helping us maintain Part 11 compliance and other regulatory body requirements, including GDPR. So this is more of a technical one for the IT guys. Essentially, what we're trying to focus on here is that your existing analysis environment, existing computing environment is unchanged. We link into that seamlessly. You're going to connect to that database through a URL, so it's a web address, either through a web client, a small plugin that we add to the Phoenix application, or a client application which understands and synchronizes your local working folders back up to the integral database. The system is very scalable. We have user groups as small as a couple of users up to large CROs with 200+ users working with the system. So you can take this knowing with confidence it will be able to support you however large your organization is, whether you merge or divest in the future. The system comes with 5 license types, user types if you like, an administrator, a user, a QA, an archivist, and an external partner. And these user types can be combined in various ways. For instance, a QA and archivist. QA would be someone who's typically only read-only in the system. The interesting point of an archivist is it permits only it's the only role that permits unlocking of data. So we're supporting what we would consider electronic archiving. Any user who has a permission can lock an analysis or a set of data, but only an archivist has the right to unlock that to enable other users to make edits if required. How you configure those permission groups can be very much defined by yourselves. We give you some example roles, as I said, to start off with, but you can customize those. Be very granular, including blinding of data sets if necessary. Similarly, the system comes with a set of standard, or I say standard, default folders to get you started, but you can configure those further to help guide people where they're going to place their analyses and track and store all of the parts of your workflow. We've got metadata you can put around those analyses to further search and control access to the database. As I mentioned already, you're archiving directly in the working environment. This is very interesting because it means that all of the data you build up over the lifetime of your compound becomes sort of product knowledge that anyone can access. They want to perform in a meta-analysis, they can still access data that's been generated by a different group at a different time, and it's locked down by archive. They can't accidentally update it, but they can still use that in building their models up. So Part 11 compliance, this is been around for around 20 years now, CFR 21. It's very important, not just for regulation, but also just to be a good scientist. Who's done something, when did they do it, why did they do that, that's the reason they were entered, and what changes did they make. And you'll see a full electronic audit trail, and we also supply some comparator tools so you can see exactly what those data changes were. We're working with files here, so this is supporting a file-based architecture stored in the database. All versions of those files are tracked and can be brought back up if we need to review. Dependencies is the key point here, that when you build analyses on some other source file, that by default is set as dependency, and that means that if that source file changes or that source analysis changes, your analysis is automatically flagged as being out of date, and you can simply reload the data with the latest copy and refresh that analysis. And this single point of truth makes maintaining the up-to-date analysis and similarly QC and reviewing much easier. Again, for the background, we're supporting working with local analytical environments and cloud-based analytical environments, Windows, Linux, whatever analytical tool you're using with. Here's just some examples you might be having in your environment. The advantage of the vendor hosting, again, another one would be that your validation has been done by Certara. We're going to provide an update currently 6-monthly period. So the software, if there's any feature requests, we review those. We do a release that's scheduled once every 6 months, just pushed out. We let you know when the downtime is going to be for an hour or two, late Friday evening, and that update's there. And Monday morning, you can be up working again with the system. We also provide a staging environment, so you can see a preview of that a few weeks before official release if you want to. So all of the things you need to do as an organization in terms of validating and revalidating a system is greatly supported and enhanced by having this hosted and provided by Certara. We've obviously got that maintenance, but also support and training available. And our help desk is 24/5. So the whole working week, we have support people around the globe that can help you if you forgot your password or whatever. So there's very little downtime if you've got a problem with the system. And this means that you can work more efficiently with other people. You can get rid of emailing data between different laboratories or having to use different SFTP sites. Everything can be in one place without the need for VPNs, etc. So at a very simple schematic, this is your machine, this laptop in the bottom right-hand corner, and up here under AWS's cloud is the integral data repository. And you can view that data or upload data through the web client, as indicated by the Chrome browser. And then that can additionally be synchronized back to your computing environment. So that might be on your desktop, or as I said, it could be a cloud environment. And we're going to be using this client application later in the demo to show that, as well as the Phoenix app. So I want to go through a simple, fairly fast demo of Integral so you can understand what it is at a high level and how it works. So I'm going to open up, take you through a top level view of the Integral browser and the features. Then I'm going to play the roles of a data manager, uploading some data, some things arrived from a bioanalytical lab, something like that. PK scientist is then going to use this data with Phoenix, perform a simple analysis, and they might then find out that there's some reassays, and we're going to update that data, rerun the latest copy of the data again with Phoenix, and then the PK scientists might say, okay, that data is complete, but some other SAS programmer or pharmacometrician wants to do additional analysis on the results of the Phoenix NCA. And they're going to use this integral client tool. And in this case, I'm just going to show a very simple example with R, but it could, of course, be NumMem, Monolix, whatever. And finally, we'll do a brief review of the audit and data changes we did during the demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to turn first to a web client. So you can see here's my web browser, and there's an address, and I'm working with the staging environment here. And I'm going to log in, my username and password. And here's my working environment. And you can see I've got 86 studies that are visible to me. If I want to find some studies, I can very quickly type fragments of those study folder names, and it will bring those back here. I can additionally create filters to look for folders of a certain type. So I can say, well, I want to look at libraries. Click apply, maybe remove that part. And there are the libraries that I have in this system. And I can clear and apply that. Okay, then we've got additionally a search feature. Now this is pretty cool. This is not searching on the folder names, but the contents within files. So if I type, say Cmax, it's going to return quite a lot of results here because every time it's found a value of Cmax, it's there and it's been listed in here, and you can see it's highlighted that it's found Cmax within that file. Okay. And you can imagine you could refine the results further in this lower panel here. Security, I'm not going to go through everything here, but you can see we've got the users. I can simply go and add a user up here because I'm an administrator. Typical user wouldn't have that. And there's also groups. And you could have which members are administrators within those, for instance, and what permissions that grants them. And those can be set up in different ways. So here's an example of a indication-based group. So we were looking at cardio drugs, and so it's going to be looking to search on the criteria of cardiovascular. There's a compare function. I'm going to come to that later. There's a copy link, which is another way of building up dependencies, which is fairly straightforward. And we can look at later if we have time. Got the administration panel. So this is the structure. You can see that there's folder types of library, and then it will build these subfolders below it, or a study, which is creating these subfolders of analyses. Okay, and these are things which are possible to be generated by the system. Properties. So this is the metadata. So I've got a study type and what type of study that can be, whether it's a legacy study, which comes from our old Farsight knowledge-based server, the PKS, some of you may know that, or a study generated in Phoenix, or any of the other, sorry, not Phoenix, Integral. And then things like the file type. So all of this, you can see there's little edit buttons that we can create new things. Some of these are generated by the system, so they're locked down, but new things that I've generated can be added and edited further. Okay, and then last but not least, there's a system audit report, which I'll touch on at the end of the demonstration. So let's go back to the home, and I'm going to start working on something. And I'm going to start by creating a new folder. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to take a study folder. And I'm just going to call it my initials, and it is June 14th. And just to make it easy to find this later, I've got the name. I can set up a therapeutic area here. So I could say this is cardiovascular, for instance, and the compound is integral. And you can see it finds terms I've used in the past, so reduces chance of mistyping things. And you can configure how this looks, whether you want to use radio buttons, drop downs, check boxes, whatever, which are mandatory fields, which are not. So I'm going to click apply. And that new study is being generated over here. We can see that here, June 14th. And within there, it's got a subfolder for analyses, the data where I'm going to load some data at the moment, and documents where I might store some other information. So I'm going to go here to the data, and I'm going to click on upload files, click here, and I'm going to pick up a couple of files, a sample file and a dose file for my analysis. Click open, upload. This is the draft data has arrived, made from the lab, click sign. Everything I do is, of course, any change I do. So it looks like there's a lot of changes here because I'm accelerating a workflow that you might do over a day or so, and I'm doing lots of different tasks. So makes sense. So got the data loaded, and I can look at that straight away. So if I click in here, I can see that data that's been loaded up. It's rendered, that CSV file, and we can work further with that. What I want to do is move into the Phoenix client now. So here I am, I've opened up Phoenix, and we've got this integral plugin. So I'm going to click on that, click on browser. And I've got a couple of environments I might be working with. This might be my production environment, and this is my testing environment. I'm going to stick with my testing environment, connect up. And again, so this is now the integral browser within Phoenix. It looks very similar to the browser you saw in the web by design to make it a familiar environment. Same buttons at the top. The difference now is that when I go in and pick up this study I'm working on, I can start doing something in analysis where I can add a save point. Now a save point is going to create a Phoenix project, and I'm going to load up all the data that's within there. Click on that, I can expand it. You can see to check both of those. And you can see that it needs a name. So I'm just going to say NCA, click submit. And what that's doing is opening up a Phoenix project using that data. I'm going to go through the import tool of Phoenix to check the data is correctly structured. It's got a units row here on these two files. And I'm going to just minimize this for a moment. Oh, actually, no, I'm going to bring in, sorry, I have a workflow template that will help me. So I'm going to run that filter again, find my global library, and there's also a workflow template, which will be useful for us. So I'm picking that up. It's something I generated a couple of months ago. I can load that selected item, and that will come up into Phoenix as well. So then I can minimize here, and we can see what we've got. This is the workflow I just showed you. And up here is the data. So it's loaded up, and you have to imagine that I'm bashing on my keyboard here. All of this is protected and locked down. by default because it's come from our secure repository. I can't edit those offhand. I can deliberately choose to detach from the source, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, you see down here, because I want to maintain those dependencies. That's my source data. Here's my workflow. I'm going to use this stored standardized workflow that I might have built for common analyses, and I'm managing within Phoenix. So I'm just using a data link to pick up the two sources. And this might be a quick way I might visualize my data. Just going to run off, generate a couple of plots, perform an NCA, generate a couple of tables and plots of the results as well. So you can see that's Phoenix just running as it would do normally. Any workflows you've generated before are still going to work with Integral. Okay, so there's nothing that you've built before you're not going to lose. And here in this review of the data, I might say, well, there's something funny going on with this blue line here. And I might request the bioanalyst, are there some reassays we can do? Maybe we've got to switch sample, something like that. That's my first review of the data. So I'm going to click save, and I'm going to write that analysis back to the repository. So I'm here based in England, and this has been written back to the cloud. I'm going to leave the save point name as it was. I could change it. This is my last chance to change it, so it makes version 1. And I will just say a simple NCA. It's totally optional to put something in here. Save options. This is pretty cool. So what we've got here is when I save the Phoenix project file, I'm going to save the whole project file. And also I'm going to extract out certain parts of that file. So the final parameters worksheet is something I might want to use elsewhere. So I'm going to extract that out as a CSV file, but I could choose other formats. And then the last tab we don't really need to look at because the defaults are what we want to be able to invalidate the save point. That is flag it if those source data changes, and also to notify me if that data changes. So that's all good. I'm going to hit next. I could lock this analysis at this point. I don't want to. I'm going to click finish and draft NCA maybe. Okay. Pop in my username. So this is all managed by Okta. So this can be federated with other systems if need be. To enable single sign-on, things like that. Okay, so that's now been saved back into Phoenix, and I'm actually going to just close that just to say that. So I'll close this project. I don't need to save the changes here because that would be saving it locally. I don't need to do that. That's fine. And I'm going to show you, well, back in the web client, for instance, if I go back in here and I click refresh and choose that analysis, you can see there's now an NCA analysis. It's version 1. And below that are some results. So let's take the final parameters, for instance, and you can see all the Cmax, AUC, everything generated from Phoenix has been extracted out for me to use later. But what I want to do is say to the bioanalyst, is there something wrong with that source data? And they go away and they perform some reassays, and it turns out there is a new version of the data. So I'm going to click on upload new version. Here's my file of my reassays. Click open, upload. And because I selected an original file and said I wanted to update it, it says, do you want to replace samples with this samples reassay as the new revision of that file? I say, okay. Reassays arrived. And you can see this is what we mean in terms of the compliance. Every change, every edit to the database will be prompted with an ESIG. And that file, just get the browser a chance to catch up, has now got revision 2. And you can see draft data arrived, reasons assayed, instead of updated. I could revert to a prior version if I wanted. I can download a copy of that to check it, and we can, well, actually, let's do that now. We'll run to compare for a moment. So if I'm going to click here, compare, and we'll bring up that file, data, samples. And by clicking on the file I want to compare, it finds version 1 and version 2. If I had other versions, I could pick those out, and it highlights the values which have changed. See those rows, and in bold are the specific values that have actually changed. Okay. The other thing we notice here is my analysis is red. Okay, and that means it's out of date. Now, one thing to note is there's no ellipsis, 3 little dots here, and that's because I'm in the web client. So I can't load up that NCA to Phoenix from the web client, but I can look at any one of these files in here and move around. Okay, so each of those are downloadable, etc. Okay, so that's all good. Let's pop back to Phoenix, and I'm going to go back into the integral browser, and I'm going to show you what happens when I bring up my got it hidden behind there, bring up my prior analysis. So here we are, just give that a quick refresh. There's the analysis NCA version 1, and I'm going to say load the save point. So when I load the save point, it goes away and checks and says, okay, there's your save point's out of date. We knew that was red. Get the latest versions of all objects, or you can also refresh from source to get the latest version manually. So I'm going to say yes, I do want the latest version of the data. It brings that back in. I read in my data correctly, and there's now a new version of that data in here. I don't see that. That's values in there, 50.9, but it's all controlled in the background from Integral. And because of that, my workflow is out of date. I can simply click on the workflow, re-execute that in Phoenix. And that change has been made. So I can save that. And we are in there, all these the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and click finish. And I'm aware that we're running a little bit over time for the things I want to show, but hopefully we can just keep going, and you can catch up on the recording if you need to get away to something else. So what we've done now is the first 5 steps of my slide before, about bringing the data in, analyzing it, updating it, reanalyzing it, all done. What I want to do now is swap to the Integral client. So this is if I want to use another tool that isn't Phoenix to analyze my data. So this looks a bit similar. Again, but much simpler options up here. I'm going to connect in here and say I want to work with that data that we've been doing before, but with another analytical tool. And the way we do that is we find what we want to be working with, and I'm just going to pick it up here. You can see the menu is otherwise the same. I'm going to highlight that project that we're working on, June the 14th one, and I'm going to synchronize it down to my desktop. And when I hit sync, downloads that project, and what it's doing is making a copy of that in this folder here. So once that's done, I can go to R, and I'm going to make a new project. You could work with this however you want, but here's an example. And I'm going to use an existing directory, and we'll pick up that local sync, June 14th, analyses. I've forgotten something because I was in a panic because we're out of time. We'll just go and sort that out now. I'm going to go back in here. Sorry, apologies. I'm going to make a separate folder to make it clear what's what. So here we are. Okay, so there's my analysis and my NCA. I want to work separately just so I don't mix up Phoenix and R analysis. So I'm going to make a new folder and call it analysis and call it R type or whatever. Okay, and it's going to be using the client application. Say apply, and I'll just resynchronize that back. So it's there. See, it says it already exists. That's fine. I'm going to overwrite that. Okay, and then back to R. Apologies for that. Using an existing directory, browse, pick up integral, local sync, June 14th, analyses, and here's the folder. It could be named anything. Open. Okay. So I'm going to create a project there in R. So this is now my R working space. I'm using R Studio. I'm no great expert, so bear with me with my rather mediocre R coding skills. So I'm going to pick this up and just pop that in here. So I'm just showing you where my working directory is. Then I'm going to read in the final parameters worksheet from going up a level to the NCA and picking up that final parameters sheet. And then I'm going to create a couple of simple plots. And then I'm going to finish. So we'll run that away. And you can see it's generated the final parameters worksheet here in R. We've got a couple of plots being generated. Okay. And I'm going to say, great, let's close that project. I've finished what I want to do in R. Save. Okay, that's done now in R. And now the important bit is I'm going to pick up that analysis. There it is. And you can see it's got these grayed out. These are the box plots I made. And I'm going to sync to integral. So I'm syncing back up to the repository. And we've got client application, tool. I could say it was R or something if I wanted. Click next. Now ask me, is there any sort of dependencies I want to build up? And yes, there is. I want to make a dependency on that final parameters worksheet or the whole project. I'll just do it on the worksheet. Click next. Next. And give my reason, R analysis with some box plots. And the key point, what I've been showing you there is it could have been any analytical tool. It didn't matter. We were just reading a working directory that uses. So it could have been SAS or Piranha to do nummem, etc. I think I mistyped my password. Nope, I've got it right. So then it uploads it back up. That's complete. I'm going to go to home. And we can now see my analysis I've just done. There it is. Now I've got two folders, including this R type. If I go to contents, I can see the plot I just did in R as well. So that's all been joined together. There you go. So that's the box plot and the other plot I made. And what we've hopefully shown you in this demonstration is all of that analysis is tied together. If I went back and changed my source data a third time, then you'd see these dependent analyses being marked out of date as well. So what I want to go down a little bit further on is the system audit report. That's just showing things which happen at a system level, and you can make this more complicated if you want, but it's essentially showing you everything you might do. So downloads, if I went ahead and deleted something, so I chose event type and undo that and just say administration and okay. You can see different types there, activities, deleted. So this is how I could find out if I deleted a folder, right? Anything which has happened where that audit trail isn't possible on the folder itself, but we've deleted it, and you can see what's happened here, changes to users, etc. If I go back to the home and again pick up the study we've just been working on, we can see the history of that, all these save points, any changes I made to the metadata, drill down one more level here. You see there were 2 save points on that, so there's, sorry, 2 versions of that save point. And if I expand up one of those, it will show you what those dependencies are. Sorry, I'm just going to move a button. So it's showing that analysis is dependent on those 2 source files and that template, and what version those are of those. So we didn't update the doses or the workflow template. If you had a standard workflow template that everyone should use, you could update that, and then people would be prompted to reanalyze those sets of data using that workflow template. And I can take a copy of that offline at any time. I already showed you the compare tool. The copy link is another way of bringing in analyses from, bring in source files for analyses in other ways. So I could say I've got 2 things here, and there might be something I've done in the past. If I open this up and I would say, okay, I want to reuse that somewhere else, I can just drag that across to another folder if I've opened it up. Maybe I want to put it in documents. And then I get a chance to, do I make a copy or a link? So a copy is an actual copy of the file, or a link, I'd probably put it at auto update. And then that file is available in that other folder forever. So this helps with your meta-analyses, etc., or cross-study reporting. So I think that is everything I wanted to show. Apologies for running over time. There was quite a lot of features I thought would be interesting to see. Sebastian, do we have any questions?
So maybe, Simon, you can go back on camera and we'll take the questions.
Sure.
So I have 2 questions, and we can give some more time to the attendees to submit other questions if they have them. The first one is, how often is the system updated and how is that managed?
Okay, so I did touch on that before. Sorry, I'm trying to find out how to switch my camera back on. There we go. Should be seeing me now.
Yep. Great.
Yeah. So the system is maintained by Certara, and what we do is we have a scheduled update once every 6 months at the moment. That means that at least a month beforehand, we'll be giving you the exact date and time of that happening. Typically, as I said, it's late on a Friday. You'll be given a copy of the draft release notes so you know what's changed. We'll then update the staging environment first. That's the one I've just been working on. So you can get a preview of those changes with the pre-release copy. And then on the day of the production update, we'll just say log out for an hour. We'll make those updates, and then you can log back in. Sometimes there may be a change that requires an update to one of the plugins, either the Phoenix plugin or the Integral plugin. But sometimes it's just an update on the database side with some new features, and you don't need to update the plugins either. If you do need to update the plugins, we'll let you know, and again, provide those in due time.
Great, thank you. And the second question, I think you touched upon that as well, but it's an important one. Could Integral be used with Piranha and non-MEM?
Yeah, I hope that should be obvious from the demonstration, but if you want to see more, please let us know and we can follow up with a specific demonstration with your tool of choice. This synchronization function I've shown with the integral client is really saying, take this data down out of the database and set it to my working directory for whatever tool I'm working with, whether it's SAS or NumMem, whatever. Work with those tools as I would do normally, and then rather than that data then be stored back onto some network drive, it's actually going to be uploaded back to the database in a linked and controlled way. And I think that's the really beautiful thing about this, is that you're not having to go and check other drives to see has that data